Hi, this is Kevin. Welcome to my tutorial for Chapter 7, Exercise 1 in the Zelle book. In this tutorial, we're going to demonstrate a pretty basic two-way decision using if-else. Okay, that's what Exercise 1 is all about. And as an example, we've decided to calculate the total cost of a hotel stay. So the normal room rate is $150 per night, although it doesn't like the way I spelled night. And starting with the third night, the rate goes down to $100 per night. So we're going to prompt the user and ask the user how many nights you're going to stay, and we're going to say your total charges will be whatever. Okay? This is pretty much like the example that we have in exercise 1. Okay, so let's get started, right? Let's define a main. So I'm going to define a main, def main, no arguments. Okay. And starting in this chapter, we have a new practice, which is we're going to check if we've been started as a main module before we invoke the main. Now this is, I think, kind of wacky practice that Python programmers have. Modules, which we have right here, where the module that we're in is tutorial for exercise 1.py. Theoretically, modules can be used for one of two things. One, a script, just a script that you are going to execute. And two, you might want to use that code as a library that you would import. And then you would be able to run, say, functions from that library. Okay? So what people do is they want to know how you're doing this. Are you running this as a script, or have you imported it as a library? And if you've imported it, then they don't want to execute the main. A lot of people put test code in there. So what we're going to do is, even though I'm not going to recommend that you organize your code that way, we're going to follow along with the Zelle recommendations and a lot of Python programmers, and we're going to add the code down here. If name underscore underscore name underscore underscore equal and he decides he wants to use apostrophes here instead of the double quotes. So underscore underscore main underscore underscore. So if it's equal to that, that means we are in a situation where we want to call main. Okay? Alright. And why isn't it liking if? It's not liking if because there's no code in main, and they want code. Now, I'm going to give you a little tip here. There is a no code here expression called pass. And we can simply, if we've got something that doesn't have any code in it yet, it's not typical that we're going to be creating code blocks that we expect to stay empty indefinitely. But that is actually something that you can type into main when it's empty, and it'll be considered non-empty, and yet it doesn't actually execute anything at all. So let's give this a run. Okay, and it seems to have worked. There's a pass says, well, don't do anything for me, but it seems to have worked okay. That's good. Okay, and So let's replace a pass with a print that kind of gives a polite rendition of what this does. So print, and then let's say calculate the cost of a hotel stay. Okay, that looks okay. All right, so we've got that. That's the first thing we're going to do. And again, let's give it a run, make sure it works. Yep. Seems to work okay. I'll make that a little bigger so you can see it. All right, that's good. Okay, so we know what the room rates are: $150 per night for the first night and $100 per night. Well, $150 for the first 2 nights and $100 per night for the third and after. Okay, so I guess we're going to have to know how many nights. So let's go do that. Okay. So I always like a blank line in between that polite message and our prompt for data. So we're going to prompt for and let's get rid of our spelling problem up here. It doesn't like night. Oh, let's just put N-I-G-H-T. It doesn't like N-I-T-E, which is kind of advertising spelling, I guess. Okay. All right, we've got that. So let's say nights. Okay. That's going to be an integer value, I think, because we don't want to fool with people saying that they want to stay fractional days. Okay. Typically, in this kind of application, they're going to charge you for a whole day, even if you stay a part of the day. So let's make sure that we get an integer value. Okay. So nights equal, and let's call int to turn into an integer what we get from input. Okay, and we'll say please enter an integer value for nights. Okay. All right. So that kind of gives them the idea they have to give us a whole number of nights, or this code as it currently sits is going to blow up. Okay. All right. Then we're going to do the calculation, and then we're going to print the result. So for right now, let's just print nights. Print nights. It's kind of a nice thing to test. So we run it once, and let's say we say 4 nights, and then we print 4. Okay, that's looking good. And let's run it again. Make it a little bigger again. And let's say 2.5 nights. Well, it's not going to like that. Okay. So depending on how far you've come, you have already seen that we can catch code like this in an exception block, and that would be nice if we already had the we could catch this kind of problem in an exception block, but we don't really we haven't learned it enough to set up a reprompting loop. So we're not going to do that, even though we've learned about how to raise and catch exceptions in this chapter. We're not going to do that yet. Okay? So we're going to let it blow up still. And it won't be too long before we have all the tools that we need to catch exceptions and reprompt. Okay, so we don't want to print nights. Let's see. Okay. I'm going to do this, what I consider to be the kind of naive way. I'm going to do this with the calculation right in line. I always like to take these kind of calculations and extract them into a method, but I'm going to code it in line and then we will extract it into a method. Okay, so now that we know the nights, okay, now we know enough to calculate the cost. Okay, so let's say, well, the breaking point is going to be are we going to be there longer than 2 nights? Okay, so let's say if nights less than or equal to 2, right? Well then, the cost can be assigned the value nights times, what's the nightly rate? 150. And I want to make sure that that's a float, so I'll put a decimal point, and because it's money, I'll put 2 here. Floats aren't great for money, but we haven't really learned anything appropriately better yet, so we're just going to play along and use floats for now. And the first thing I see is we don't have a colon at the end of our if. Okay, so that's nice. So let's see. So that's one way to calculate the cost. Okay, and we're going to say else. Okay, so this would be it's greater than 2, right? So cost equals, and let's be kind of explicit here. Let's say then it's going to be 2 times 150. Okay, now we could assume that it's 300, but that looks pretty good. Plus, and then how many nights over? It's going to be at least 1 over. Okay, so we're going to have this. We're going to have, I'm going to even put another one here. So I'm going to have nights minus 2. That's going to be the nights above 2 times 100. That's it. So it'd be, if we were there for 3 nights, it would cost us like $400. Okay, so that's right in line. All right. So now we should have our answer. So let's print let's do something like this. Let's say the cost for, and let's print the nights. Nights will be, okay, and then let's put out cost. Okay, we want to pretty it up. We may want to do dollars and cents and all that kind of stuff, but we're not quite there yet, okay? So that's how it's going to look right now. All right, so let's give it a run. So let's do a little testing. Let's see what happens when we're here for 1 night. 150. Okay, that makes sense. Let's calculate it for 2 nights. 300. I think that's good. Again, I'd probably like to see 2 decimal places there, but we'll get there. Okay. Let's do 3 nights. 3 nights. $400. Okay, I think that's looking good. All right, that's pretty good. And let's just do 10 nights, just for the heck of it. See how that looks. So 10 be $1,100. See, the first 2 are $300, and then the next 8 are $100 apiece. So yeah, $1,100 sounds just right. And just for the heck of it, let's ask for 0 nights. See if we get a reasonable value. So the cost for 0 nights will be 0.00, because it's 0 times 150. Okay, well that's looking good. I like the way the calculation is working so far. All right, now what could we do to format this a little bit better? Okay, well, how about we try to create a format-oriented print string, one that's one that uses a format. Okay, so let's say print. Okay, and then of course we want format strings. That's going to be a string. Okay, and we're going to want to say the cost for let's take that. And now we have to have we're going to have a set of curly braces, and we're going to have the first template value in there. It's going to be 0 is going to go in there. So the cost for that many nights will be, and now we want a dollar and cents amount, so the dollar is going to go outside, and we're going to have the curly braces again, and this is not going to be the 0th one but the 1th one. Okay, 1, and let's say 0.2, 0 because we want it to just be as wide as it has to be, and 0.2 because we want it to have 2 decimal places to the right, and then F to say we want it to be fixed. Okay, so then we've got format, and what are the things that we want to format it? Well, nights is the first one, and cost is the second one. All right, I think that's it. So let's just put that one into a comment for now and give it a run and see if we're getting our proper formatting. So let's do our 3 nights. That's a nice value. $400. The cost for 3 nights will be $400. Okay. Do we want a closing period on that? Well, I'm of 2 minds on that. On one hand, if we had it in a paragraph, I think it would make sense. But here, I think it just is potentially confusing because we don't have a lot of strings of text that end in periods. So I'm just going to leave it just the way it is now. So I like that. Okay. And I could stop here. Now, a couple of things. Before I finish, I've got 2 blank lines up here. I want two blank lines down here in between the function and the call to the function. Those look good. Let's just do a check of the code. So I'm going to go up to the menu, click on Inspect Code, and I just want the current file. And what are we going to get? Oh, it says I have a typo in the word calculate. Okay, well, let's go back and fix that. Spelling, typo change, calculate. All right, that looks good. I think we'll probably be okay. Let me try it again. Code, inspect code, current file, and down here on the left, no suspicious code found. So that looks good. I'd be ready. I've got that. I probably want to do maybe one more test. And try 5 nights, see what that looks like. $600. Okay, that's fine. All right, that looks terrific. Now, can I stop there? Yeah, I could definitely stop there. Okay. So the question is, would it be helpful to factor this, to refactor it, to extract a method that does this calculation for us? Okay, well, what would that work like? Well, maybe we would call it calculate cost, and maybe we would pass it the number of nights, and maybe we would get back the cost. It would return the cost. Okay. Oh, you know what? We forgot to get rid of that commented out code. We don't want that in our production code. All right. Okay, so we've got this. So I'm not going to stop here. I'm going to show you how to do more factoring. And how am I going to do this? Well, I'm just going to take the part of the code that I want to factor out and highlight it and say I want to refactor extract method. But what do I want to factor out? Well, it doesn't help me a lot to create a function that prints things. Okay. Here where we're testing things out, we'd like to print things out, but in production programs, we're not always printing the answers out on the console. Okay, we may be sending them back via some kind of web server logic. We may be sending them back to a web page. So creating functions that print their answers instead of returning their answers is not a good investment. Okay, they're not general enough. So I want to say, just want to capture the if through the else, just the decision logic and the calculation, and I'm going to right click and say refactor extract method. Remember, these are actually functions because they're not in a class. We call them methods. Okay, so we need to give it a name, and I'm just going to call it calculate cost. And it's already figured out it's going to get a parameter, nights, as input. That makes sense. And it already says it's going to have an output variable, cost. That's what it's going to return. Well, gosh, it guessed it, just what I wanted to do. So let's click on OK. And let's see what's going to happen. Well, we've got a new method called calculate cost. It gets nights, okay, as a parameter. Okay. Now, I just want to emphasize to you guys, even though we're using the same name in a different function, this is actually something different. The only thing that matches them up is the fact that nights is passed here. A lot of times what I like to do is do a rename on this. I'm going to do a refactor rename on this, and I'm going to call this param nights, which is to say this is the parameter nights that gets initialized when I call it. Okay, so that makes it clear that we're not seeing this thing up here. Okay, actually what we're doing is we're getting a copy of the variable that points to this value object. Okay, so now I think we've done a good job here of parameterizing this. Okay, now could we go further? Yeah, what some people would do is that they would say, well, instead of putting cost here, okay, they would just put this this expression down into the format. Now, one of the things for me is, does it make real long code? Well, it makes a code that's a little bit long, given the magnification I'm using here. So I decided I'm going to stop right here. But these calculations, these kind of functional calculations, when you extract them into a function, it becomes much more clear what the inputs and what the outputs are. What's the input? Well, nights. What's the output? Cost. Okay? So I kind of like this. Do you have to do it? No, you don't have to do it. So let's just test this new version. Okay, so I'm going to say for 2 nights it's $300. That looks good. And let's run it again. For 4 nights it's $500. That makes sense. And for 10 nights, I think it was $1,100. $1,100. Very nice. So I like that. So here's where I'm going to stay. For some people, this would be a little too factored out. This would, you wouldn't have to extract a method like this. For me, I like this. So you're going to have to decide for yourself. I think the official solution for the class in this exercise is not factored out like this. But, I like to show you things I like. So that's it for now. I'm going to say bye until next time. Bye-bye.